Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Monday, March 8th, 2000, whatever the hell it is, 21. I'll get that right eventually. It's still not up on my screen. It doesn't get included. I think we do this about once a year, around New Year's, or a few months afterwards, where I complain that the year isn't in the date that's displayed, mostly because they figure anybody who's turning on a computer from day to day knows what year it is, but that's not always the case. Good morning. Time for yet another show. It is Monday. That's one of those things that goes wrong about once a week. And as I mentioned in the post this morning, the all-purpose NAFTA-compliant refrigerator calendar tells me it is International Women's Day today. I don't know what we're supposed to do in order to mark the occasion, but I imagine that there will be a number of stories circulated today, perhaps some focusing on, I guess, on international women, or women internationally. I'm not really sure which one this is supposed to be, but I don't know. Congratulations, and let's have a party, I guess, a small party, no more than 10 people in any indoor location, and please wear your mask, I suppose. And we move on from there, having marked the thing as best we can. Plenty of people up and talking this morning, and some people who didn't get any sleep talking all the way through the night about, I gather, about the interview that was aired with, what do we call them? I mean, I just see them referred to as Harry and Meghan. He's still Prince, right? Prince Harry. He's the Duke of something. That's terrific. Congratulations, by the way. You know, you've been the Duke of whatever it is for a while now. Hope it's great. And lots of controversy swirling. It was a troubling subject for the interview. I mean, serious stuff beneath the fact that we're talking about royals who, you know, generally speaking, who cares? But, you know, they're famous people and all that. But this was had a very serious issue underlying it, which is, of course, the fact that apparently the allegation is, and I don't think anybody has any real difficulty believing the allegation, that Meghan Markle being black, is she? I don't know I don't know what her background is, but I know that she's at least part black, just in terms of what I don't know how, I really know nothing about her, except that, well, she's married to the famous Prince guy. But anyway, they were alleging all kinds of racism within the family. I mean, inside, not just the institution of the monarchy, which I assume is probably racist at its core at some level, because it's a monarchy and it doesn't really respond to, you know, modern conditions over anything, I guess. But, you know, just in terms of the family, he's married this woman and you should be nice to her. But that's not the way it is in the royal family. And that's one of the reasons why people, I guess, love/hate the royal family. It's a weird institution. I can't comment on it from a strong position as an American. I don't really understand it. My understanding of the royal family comes from watching The Crown or other movies about other people who also wore the crown hundreds of years ago. And, you know, they're weirdos, and that's the way it is. But this was a very serious allegation being made. And for people who are into the royals, it was a very serious thing because I guess Prince Harry is, I don't know, quitting his job as a royal somehow, which is a thing you can do. But in addition, you know, they've made life very difficult for the both of them, and that's a sad thing. And Oprah Winfrey did the interview, and that's a newsworthy thing all by itself. And it was supposedly very revealing and troubling. So for those of you who are worried about, you know, how royals are getting along, that must have been a real shocker. I didn't watch it. I'd love to know more about it. I guess I don't know how much time I'll give over to the study of the subject, but it sounds pretty bad. I did see some things last week that foreshadowed this, or I guess what we would find out in the interview, which I did think were interesting in the sense that she was, Meghan Markle, and I don't think she has a Does she have a title? Is she a duchess? I don't know. Maybe they withheld the title from her. I understand they're planning on withholding the title from their children, which I don't know how they feel about that, but I don't know. Anyway, what I found out last week was that they were alleging that Meghan Markle, the maybe Duchess, I should have looked that up probably before I started. Yeah, she is a Duchess, says Greg. Okay, thanks, Greg. He knows because there's a harbor seal telling me this in the little avatar here. But so she's a Duchess, and apparently, well, the allegation was that she was very demanding of the palace staff. And I think here, by the way, we're talking about Kensington Palace, where all the non-queen people get housed. And but, you know, Buckingham Palace is sort of the umbrella organization for the royal family and all of its properties or whatever. But the palace staff was saying she was very demanding and was abusive to the staff, which I thought was really kind of standard job for royals to do, just because I have a negative impression of royals. But I don't know. Anyway, the story that I found interesting about it was, okay, so there's all these allegations that she had been rude to the staff or berated them or something, and I couldn't imagine that wasn't the case with other royals, and people did in fact point out, you know, there are known abusive royals all the time. Like we figured, there are lots of abuses going on with the royals, and as it turns out, the Buckingham Palace, you know, royalty, the whole situation, the whole department there they've got an HR department there, which I guess makes a certain amount of sense in the modern context. People have to work there; they need their paperwork taken care of. And I guess if they're beat up on by, I would have thought other people other than the royals, whose job it is to beat up on them, and their job is to be beat up on by them. I think to a certain extent. I guess that the one concession to modernity that they have is that you can now file complaints against the actual royal family members if they abuse you too badly. And it looks like the very first person that they've decided should be subject to such a review happens to be the brand new princess, who maybe also kind of bothers them a little bit because she's black. So that was rather interesting. I happened to see somebody tweeting about that and arguing about that. It says here, what do I have here? What am I looking at? I'm looking at a tweet from Feministe, who has grabbed someone else's analysis about these earlier stories. Lainey Gossip, about whom I know nothing, but it does sound like a good point. Just pointing out at the time, apparently Meghan was described as demanding or Duchess difficult and too American in her way of communication. And maybe that's it. Maybe there's a certain accent in which you're supposed to be able to tell people that, you know, whatever. You have to take off your coat and put it over a puddle for me to walk through. And she didn't have that accent. But the point that we're making here in this bit here was, how dare she come in here with her American directness and change the tea-pouring politesse of British procedures. Have I pronounced that right? Politesse? I don't know. Now, all these months later, as the Oprah interview looms, they were already talking about the Oprah interview when I saw this last week. As the interview looms, that language has been tweaked to read as bullying. So now she's being accused of bullying the palace staff, and we're learning that the royals have an HR process where employees can actually file grievances against the princes and dukes and earls themselves. I don't know if they have any earls in their ranks, but it's an American, I think, writing about this. How is it that this HR department has only just been publicly activated now? Like after all these decades of Prince Andrew's, they have some nasty language describing Prince Andrew here. His ego, his shouting, his spoiled and entitled requests, which I don't know anything about Prince Andrew, but except that he was tied up with Jeffrey Epstein at some point. So that's bad.
Well, you pronounced peccadillo wrong.
No, did I? Okay. I thought everything was in a teapot for this. Tempests in teapots. The peccadillos even fit in teapots there just because they have a lot of tea. But yes, the point here in this little screen grab, we're going, after all this stuff we've heard about, say, Prince Andrew, and now we find out there's an HR department, we're going public with a human resources complaint about a black member of the royal family working within a predominantly at all levels white institution that fuels the trope of the angry black woman. And she's the first person ever in this institution to have had an HR bullying file started on her. That seems less than likely. If you think about the hundreds plus, I guess thousands year long tradition of British royalty, but I assume the HR department is a relatively new development. But wonder of wonders, they've found the first person to tell the public that there's an HR file against them. It happens to be Meghan Markle. So it didn't sound like they were going to really make things comfortable for her. I don't know what the real dynamics of the family are, but lots of people talking about it. Big trending topic.
The firm.
Thought I'd mention
called The Firm.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Look, I liked it when I got to see The Crown and not worry about it. This is a good movie or a good miniseries. This is fun. I'm kind of enjoying it. It's well done. And then I found out there were real people in it, and I was saddened. So that's where I stand with it.
John Oliver in 2018 talking to Stephen Colbert described the royal family basically as a bunch of emotionally stunted people who were playing at this pseudo job. And
I don't know how else to.
That was at the time that Meghan was marrying in, and he basically said, "I wouldn't blame you if you pulled out. This is not going to go well."
Right.
And of course, he was right. He's British. He's allowed to say that.
He knows how to predict that. Yeah, it didn't sound like it was going to work out all that well, but good, try it. I mean, well, one, what do I care? But two, it sounds like maybe they could use a wake-up call, and three, I mean, it's not an institution I'm going to be able to understand very well, I don't think. But boy, do they have a lot of money in houses.
Well, I'm not a royal watcher, but a couple observations here. Anthony Michael Crease writing, if you're mad about racism within British royalty, let me tell you about a few bills in the Georgia legislature being voted on today.
Okay, I can understand more about that one. That's true.
Right, and this one is excellent. This is a thread by Ayesha Siddiqui. British people reacting to the American pharmaceutical ads during the Harry-Meghan interview.
Yes, I put that aside. That was a great story, or a great pickup.
That is so funny. So these are all comments on Twitter from people watching. If these medicine ads are what it's like to not have an NHS, I never want to experience that.
Yeah.
Out of the side effects of the medicine in American ads, why are they more lethal than the thing they're treating?
Sometimes. Yeah.
Right?
They were all shocked to see that, medicine is a thing we advertise.
Right. Hell, why are all American ads about medicines? Well, you should watch the evening news at 6 p.m. or 6:30 p.m., because the demographic is over 65, and so every ad is some sort of stomach aid or medication that you should be asking your doctor about. And somebody comments, I'm watching the Meghan interview recording, and yet again, I can't understand why American TV ads are like, ask your doctor for this or tell your doctor about that. Why the F would you be the one to tell a doctor what medicine to give you?
Yeah, I guess.
European to get it, but what the...
Yeah, that must be a real shock. And I mean, that must always have been a shock, I guess, even to American doctors when they started doing this. First doing this and doctors like, what? Ask your. Right. I was told to ask you
known as the
if this
business
was right
of
for me.
healthcare, which I think they recognize. Here's another one. I remember the first time I saw American TV: drugs, cars, food. Drugs that stop your food allergies. Processed crap that replaces food. Drugs that help dampen the other drugs. Now over to Super Sports. That's about summing up what you see at the dinner table if you watch the news during dinner.
That's pretty true. All we do is. Right, yeah. Here, have some food. Oh, is the food bothering you? Try this drug. Is the drug bothering you? Try this other one. Yeah, pretty much. And, of course, now lots of ads about we'll mail you your food, which is a new genre.
Right. Well, it's a pandemic,
Yeah,
we'll
that's
make it for you. We'll mail it for you, and for an extra fee, we'll eat it for you.
I guess so, right. And, pretty soon I guess we'll see ads about, has your food been lost in the mail? We can help track it down or replace it.
Right, and now we're worried about dogs.
That's true. You get your dog
we have
food
special
mailed
food
to
for
you.
dogs, and, they can't eat yard food because it's not good enough for them.
And this doesn't even come in a bag. You got to cook it.
Better food for them.
Right. Oh, well, okay. They must think we're crazy. But then again, you have a royal family. That's crazy.
Anyway, so that's all I have to say about that.
Okay.
As far as company.
Ask your government if royalty is right for you.
Yona Freemark is talking about what actually also happened over the weekend. Again, the other guy's gone, so it's not the chaos weekends that we're used to on Monday. But one big thing that happened since the last time I was on the show is that the Senate passed this big bill.
Right.
Okay.
They did.
And before we get to the big bill, a word about semantics.
Okay.
We've talked about, language on the show and how people communicate.
Yes.
This is something else. This is what you call things, right? The elves were the ones that named things, and so the elves still care about how things are named.
Okay.
And the media is split right now, interestingly enough, between calling that thing that passed the COVID Relief Act
right,
and the stimulus plan.
Yes.
Which are two completely different things, even though they're all in the bill.
Right.
And Biden called it COVID relief. I prefer COVID relief. And NBC Nightly News calls it COVID relief. A lot of the journalists call it COVID relief. The financial people, Bloomberg and the financial columnists, all call it stimulus.
Yeah,
I think you should call it what it is. It's a COVID relief package. That's what it was meant to be. There's lots of money in there.
Right.
And so I asked one of the journalists from Bloomberg, why do you keep calling it stimulus? Well, because a lot of the money's stimulus. I said, yeah, well, a lot of the money's COVID relief too, and that's what it is, and that's what everybody else is calling it, and it matters.
Infrastructure.
Because stimulus goes to banks and COVID relief goes to people.
Yeah.
And so you may call it semantics, but the fact is people remember stories and narrative. They don't remember details. I'll give you some of the details, and you won't remember it by the end of the show. You won't even remember it by the time I finish telling you what they are. Your eyes will glaze over.
You should just tell me you already did it, and I'll believe you.
Exactly. So, for example, this is Ledyard King, who's USA Today.
Okay.
Live stimulus updates. Weary senators continue wrangling over COVID relief package as debate approaches. So he gets both of them in the same thing, but insists on calling it stimulus anyway. So I said on Twitter, the media calls COVID relief stimulus, maybe, but it's COVID relief. Why don't you call it what it is? David Jolly weighs in and says that's so important. And one of the great messaging failures is it stimulus or relief? The former puts money, and remember, this is a conservative guy talking. The former puts money in people's pocket regardless of need to save a failing economy. The latter replaces lost income and employment. You could drive a truck through the messaging gap right now.
Yes.
And I think it's important, and so I thought I would mention that. He says it also focuses the question, David Jolly says to me, on how we target relief. Checks and unemployment insurance for displaced workers and those who lost income makes sense. Should it also go to those whose income was stable or went up in the last 12 months? There's no right or wrong answer, but it depends on whether this is relief or stimulus. Because if it's stimulus, you're going to give it to rich people so they could save it and pretend to spend it.
Yes.
But if you give it to poor people, they are not going to save it. They're going to spend it regardless. And one of the fascinating things about this particular plan, as opposed to the similarly priced Trump plan, is that the Trump plan went to rich people, and this plan is going to poor people, and that's not an exaggeration. That's actually what's happening. And so as part of the analysis of what's going on here, that is happening. And I think that messaging, therefore, becomes very important. So Yona Freemark notes, for example, what the Senate just passed, $1,400 checks for most people. It's means tested. Hundreds of billions to rescue state and local public services, right? One of the things that Republicans are complaining about is that state and local folks are getting money. Now, these are a lot of the jobs lost. They like that. They think that was an excellent outcome of the pandemic. Now, people who lost their jobs and those who need the services in their community, including public health people, aren't so sure it's a great idea that happened, and maybe it should be reversed. So that's part of the wrangling over the bill. $30 billion for transit and $1 billion for Amtrak. Thank you, Joe Biden. And aid for airline and bus workers.
Okay.
$47 billion in housing aid, more unemployment aid, large child credits, cheaper Affordable Care Act health insurance, COBRA now paid for.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
So that's what all Republicans said no to. Or to look at it another way, this is Eric Levitz. Despite having only a 50-vote Senate majority, Democrats are about to pass, and in fact did pass, a nearly $2 trillion bill that puts more than $7,600 into the bank account of the typical family of four, establishes America's first proper child allowance or temporary basis.
Yes.
Makes affordable care plans much more affordable, provides $27 billion in rental assistance, improves the left's prospects for winning progressive reforms at the local level by leaving states in better fiscal health than they were pre-pandemic, and cuts poverty in the U.S. by 1/3, and by the way, child poverty by 1/2. You didn't say that, but I'm adding because that's true.
Yes, okay.
None of this remotely commensurate with what working people are owed, but it's going to make the lives of hundreds of millions much better than they are now, and much better than they would have been had Democrats not come to power. Thank you, Georgia. Okay, there was some discussion, I suppose, maybe, this was like an hour ago, so maybe nobody remembers, about Joe Manchin and how he was going to vote. But the fact of the matter is that the people who mattered most were named John Ossoff and Reverend Warnock.
Yep. Right. I mean, it only happened because they won. Joe Manchin was already there.
Eric Levitt says there's a sound and righteous impulse on here to direct attention toward those places where elected officials are betraying the interests of their constituents and to raise the cost of such betrayals for those perpetrating them, or to whatever extent we can. And Democratic senators must be made to answer for their opposition to the $15 minimum wage, extension of $400 unemployment benefits is $300, but for a longer period, and with no tax under, what is it, $10,600. First amount of that doesn't get taxed. When comparable benefit levels exist on a permanent basis in other wealthy countries. But I think it's important not to let that imperative fully include partial victories. A lot of progressive and socialist organizers, staffers, and intellectuals, along with trade unions, black churches, and other working class organizations, helped bring us to a point where Joe Biden is going to deliver the largest direct increase in worker purchasing power in U.S. history.
Oh.
That's a big deal. Or as Joe Biden would say, a BFD.
Yeah, right.
To look at that and decry Democrats as indistinguishable from Republicans is both mendacious and more conducive to advancing nihilism than it is the progressive change. So that's a message to people on the left. You didn't get everything you wanted, but this is pretty damn good.
So it was certainly much better than having the thing fail. That's absolutely true. There's a lot of good stuff in it, and there was a lot of interesting takes offered over the weekend. Certainly there are a lot of things that they wish were in there that they couldn't get done, that we'll make other attempts at. But I thought the most important thing was the time spent by some of the analysts pointing out there's a ton of great stuff in here that has been missing for a long time, and it's headed for passage. Take it and get back to work on the rest of the stuff. That's true.
Right.
But
so I don't see that as stimulus. I see that as relief.
Yes.
And somebody, as I said that this morning on Daily Kos and the Pundit Roundup, which, by the way, was dedicated to Joan McCarter, because the title was Deficit Peacocks Run for Cover. She's the one that invented that term.
Yes, okay.
Nobody really cares about how much this cost. Republicans say they do, but they really don't. We know that because they voted en masse for the Trump bill that cost the same and did less.
Yep.
So that's why the title. But, people are arguing about it, and that's fine. Somebody pointed out it's properly known as, this is really not relief, it's more welfare, the way FDR described it for the people. But welfare bills don't pass, so, that's why we started this whole discussion about messaging. You can't call it a welfare bill and expect Joe Manchin to vote for it. You can call it a COVID relief bill and expect him to. And he did.
He did in the end. Yeah, there were lots of shenanigans for a while, but they did settle things. Oh, another comment on the idea of stimulus versus COVID relief that I saw, a related idea, and I can't find the tweet now, but somebody made the good point of, by the way, have any of you ever noticed that like all of the last, whatever it is, 3 Democratic presidents to be elected, their first legislative priority and their first big legislative win for all 3 of the last 3 Dems elected has been recovery, like economic recovery bills. And what does that mean? And it's like every Democrat who comes into office comes in with such a gigantic economic mess left to them by their Republican predecessor that their first priority has to be passing an economic stimulus or recovery bill of some kind. And I thought,
the parallels go beyond that. It's absolutely right. But in each one of those situations, you had a Joe Manchin-style person on the Democratic side watering it down to the extent that they could.
Yes, right.
whether it was a Bob Kerrey, or whether it was a Joe Lieberman.
Yes.
There's always somebody on the Democratic side who says, well, we have to pander to the deficit hawks here and do X, Y, or Z. And in retrospect, Joe Manchin asked the least of Biden to get something done.
Is that right?
And basically insisted more posturing than content, that what he insisted on and held the bill up for was more or less a wash.
Yeah, okay. I guess that's that helps me feel a little bit better about it. I didn't see that comparison made. I hope that holds up, because that'd be good news. Make you feel a little bit
so
better.
He voted for it, and it's important. And then Biden immediately pivoted, the long-awaited presidential pivot to voting rights are important, on the anniversary of Bloody Sunday, and we should really do something about that. And that's where the fight really is going to happen, because that's H.R. 1.
Yes, that's true. That should have been the first thing up for consideration, but we had the COVID relief first.
Well, these numbers are symbols, right?
Yeah.
And so when you talk about semantics and what things are called, this is part of what we're talking about. We have more to talk about that after the break too.
Yes.
For example, Jessica Huseman saying, genuinely wish media would stop saying restrictive voting laws are being proposed largely by Republicans.
Oh.
That's literally false. They're all Republicans.
Yes,
Let's not be dishonest to make one party feel less bad. If it were just Democrats, we'd say that.
Right. Well, maybe we would.
Right? Language matters. So, be careful about your language. And if you say something wrong, correct yourself.
Yeah. I did see somebody making the great point that the checks last time went out with Trump's name on them. This time they should go out and say, not a single Republican voted to give you one of these checks, by the way. Put that on the memo line. Why not?
Yeah, exactly.
That's illegal, but whatever. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Hi, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We exited by advocating a Hatch Act violation by the new administration, but of course, as you know, the idea of putting the memo line on the checks that says, by the way, there's not a single Republican in Congress that thought you deserved this check, or this check brought to you entirely by Democrats, or whatever variation you want on it, would presumably be a Hatch Act violation. You remember that, though? The Hatch Act being the law that the Trump administration violated hundreds of times and was caught violating it hundreds of times, and nothing happened. So, I'm not certain that it exists anymore, and it's something you could experiment with. And if you felt like taking some emoluments while you were doing it, by all means, give it a shot. So,
right.
Didn't mean to.
So finish. We're going to continue with our theme here.
Yeah, but it happened.
This is an interesting piece by Mike Tomansky in the Daily Beast. The Democrats' new more free stuff agenda is a true winner.
Oh.
Out with austerity and fretting about future deficits and trying to win over non-existent Republican support. In with public investment and helping people. It's about time.
Huh.
That pretty much sums up what happened.
I guess so. It feels like there's a shot taken there with the more free stuff bill, but okay.
Yeah. So it sucks, he says, that the minimum wage got cut out of the relief bill, and it sucks that there clearly aren't 50 votes in the Senate for it. I still think a minimum wage bill will pass Congress in some form, but obviously it would be great to see it sail through from Jump Street. It also seemed kind of pointless to cut the benefits that the Senate did, but that's where it took to get Joe Manchin's vote, and that's the Senate. Mm-hmm. But don't let those setbacks do too much to diminish what a huge win this bill is for progressive politics. This is a lot of money, more in some cases than entities were even asking for. Conservatives pointed out, for example, that the bill's funneling to schools about 5 to 6 times what the CDC estimated would be needed to make the schools COVID safe. The right says it's a terrible thing. I say good.
Yeah.
Because this is the real point of the bill. It's not to fight the pandemic or reboot the economy, although it's both of those things. It's to change the way we think about economics. Out with austerity, in with public investment. Yeah, just say it. More free stuff. Of course, it's not free. You have to pay for it. But, that's okay.
Yeah, that's
okay because you know what? Those schools need to be rebuilt. Most of them are falling apart. In my town, we got schools where you can't open the windows. Not a good thing when you're talking about pandemics, which is an interesting thing. I came across this really fascinating article in The Atlantic about, The New Yorker, about why the pandemic is so different in regard to mortality rates in some countries compared to others. Why does the pandemic seem to be hitting some countries harder than others is the exact title of the article in The New Yorker.
All right.
And you know what? We don't fully know.
Oh.
Probably for a variety of reasons. The age of the population, for example, whether or not there's been a previous virus that primed that particular population for immunity, the weather, whether or not the whole society is basically indoor or outdoor. If you don't have air conditioning and you open the windows and ventilation is better, so on and so forth. So it's probably and also, underreporting of actual illness, but nonetheless, ICUs would know who's sick and who's not sick. And so when you put that all together, there's just so much about the pandemic we don't know. You look at the U.S. and you look at numbers in Florida compared to California with very different approaches. And again, the differences are not that great. So why is it that California's restrictive approach and Florida's not so restrictive approach came to the same place? A lot of it has to do with we're not really sure, and it's not really clear at the end of the day whether that's in fact true. Florida's per capita numbers may be a little bit higher, but it's not over yet, and the variants may change things. What we do know is that ventilation is such a key part of all of this that, yelling at people and trying to shame them for going to the beach is dumb, but yelling at them for going to bars afterwards is not dumb. It's the ball game.
Yes.
And so with spring break coming and lots of people getting together and celebrating the fact that the numbers in the U.S. are down, we really have to watch and see what happens 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now. We know that. We've seen that movie before. We know exactly what happens, except this time we don't know exactly what's going to happen because there's more vaccinated people. And yet we also have the variants we didn't have before. So it makes a complex mix, and that's why public health people are having the issue of trying to explain what's really going on with these vaccines in two different ways. Again, semantics matter, and the message you try to give matters. On the one hand, the numbers are down, but there's other things going on. And when people are vaccinated, they can do things they couldn't do if they weren't vaccinated. But the CDC still has yet to make all of that clear. And caution shouldn't be a substitute for nothing changes. A lot changes. If you're vaccinated and the people you're visiting are vaccinated, you can get together and you don't need to wear masks. If you're vaccinated and you're over 65, you get to hug your grandkids. So things change. But if you're vaccinated, it doesn't mean you can go maskless to stores and bars and choirs and sing loud. At least not unless everybody else has been vaccinated and you all have vaccination passports and you're not singing to an audience who may or may not have been vaccinated. So it's a complicated picture here. It's wrong to say nothing changes, but it's difficult to point out that it's still premature to change everything before everybody's fully vaccinated.
Yes.
So that's challenge number one. And challenge number two, which a lot of my most respected public health messaging people have brought up, is the whole issue about the 3 vaccines now that Johnson & Johnson's on board.
Yeah.
Johnson & Johnson is a single shot, one you're done, and it doesn't need to be Arctic frozen.
Right.
So it makes it much easier to distribute. But people have to be aware that it's different than the other two. Yes. And so the differences between the vaccines matter. It's wrong to say they're all the same. They all keep you out of the hospital 100%, because 100% isn't 100%. The longer this goes on and the more people are added to the study, somebody's going to get sick, and somebody who got vaccinated is going to wind up being in the hospital. So you shouldn't promise it's absolutely 100% foolproof, because no vaccine is. Well, it's 97%. It's not the same as 100. And so you should be clear from the beginning what you're saying. And in fact, because Johnson & Johnson is one and done, and because it's a more traditional vaccine than the mRNA vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna, there are differences between them. So the differences between the vaccines matter, and all the COVID vaccines are good, but they're not the same. So one doc tries to simplify it and make the analogy. It's like the airplane is going down, and so don't worry about which color the parachute is that you're handed when you jump out of the plane. Just grab the chute and go. Fine. But they are different. Okay. They are all different. What if the 3 different brands of parachute? One of them is the traditional umbrella one of them is one of those 2 umbrella smaller ones. Ooh. You know, you got to know how to work them.
Yeah, those rectangular ones.
Yeah, I mean, they all work, but they're different.
Flying Elvis is
so there's nothing wrong with saying they're different. And the danger for public health messaging is if they are different, and we recognize that we're different, and you try to convince people that they're the same and they know that they're different, they're not going to believe you.
Yeah, all right, but they might take.
Well, you're simplifying that. What else are you simplifying? You're not telling me the truth about that. What else are you not telling me the truth about? These are important. If you want to be fully transparent, you need to be fully transparent. So they are not all the same. Everybody's enthusiastic about them, and the glowing message needs to be tempered with none of them are 100%. Okay, and the way that these trials work is you're looking for symptomatic disease because that's a common outcome, and it's easier to confirm in large-scale trials. Okay, severe disease, hospitalization, and death are not the primary outcomes people were looking at in these trials. They're secondary outcomes. And what they find is great, but if you really want to know the difference between vaccination and not vaccination, you need many more people over a much longer period of time if you're looking at deaths, because deaths aren't nearly as common, for example, as symptomatic disease. So they use symptomatic disease so they can get their data as soon as possible so they could submit it to the FDA so they could get their emergency use authorization. And if severe disease, hospitalization, or deaths are secondary outcomes, you can't use secondary outcomes to make all of your decision about what the final results are there, because that's not, dare I say it, the primary thing they were looking at.
Yes, can't be if it's a secondary one.
So you got to wait on that, and that's going to take some years to collate. And so does one vaccine prevent more death than others? Do you still have less than 100% efficacy for those things if you're looking to 2 years from now? We don't know. We have to wait 2 years. And nobody can afford to wait 2 years. We have a raging pandemic that's killing people. So they use primary outcome as a symptomatic disease. We know stuff from that. We are hopeful, but don't have enough data to really say for sure that it helps you not catch the illness or spread it. Looks very promising in both regards, but the data's not fully in yet. The jury's not fully in yet on those things. It's all hopeful, and people just should be honest about what we're looking at. On balance, it's way better to get it than not. Don't overpromise and don't lie about what you don't know.
All right, I can get along with that. I didn't know what to do for choosing between. If you have a choice between vaccines, or say Johnson & Johnson or the other two.
Well, some people care about different things.
Yeah.
I was having this discussion online with somebody the other day as part of this.
Okay.
And they want, based on the data, to pick one particular one. Well, but people have different needs. Johnson & Johnson is one and done. For people who really don't have time and who hate getting shot, hate getting jabs, hate getting stuck with a needle, then Johnson & Johnson may be the one for you. You only have to do it once. All right.
Yeah,
for other people who care more about what my immune response is going to be 10 days after the last shot, well, you might pick a different one. But very few people are in that situation. But you might be. You might have a particular immune system that you're most concerned about. And you may have read all of the data, most people haven't, and decided that this one has better numbers than that one. Even though, the numbers are incomplete, fine. Then pick that one.
Okay, so it won't matter.
The mayor of Detroit said, I don't want the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I'm going with the others. They're better. That's not true.
Yeah.
It's not worse. It's different.
Yeah. Well, that's
And then
true.
he changed his mind after the president called him.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, that's good. So that means more vaccine for Detroit. Good. Yeah, I was thinking the Johnson & Johnson vaccine arrived around here, and notice went out in Virginia that they're moving on to the next phase and vaccinating more people. So I get the opportunity now to, I guess, sit online and refresh for hours to find out that there's no appointments available, which is a good thing because that means lots of people are getting vaccinated. But just not me.
Well, as supply increases, that will change. My advice for people doing that, having done it myself, is do it twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. The afternoon seems to be when the appointments tend to appear.
Yeah, all right.
Like after 12 o'clock.
Well, we'll be doing that. This one gives us the opportunity. We can sort by vaccine, like which one we want, which is interesting. So I tried all, show me everything, show me this one, show me that one. And interestingly, around here, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was snapped up very quickly. So that's good news, I think. Good acceptance
rate. There were some other reports saying public officials were worried that the Johnson & Johnson might not be as popular because the initial announcement was that it wasn't quite as efficacious.
Yeah, right.
Accounting for things like, for example, that the Johnson & Johnson data came after the variants existed in countries that had the variants, whereas the other two didn't. That was before the variants. And so had you done the studies now, you might get the same result for all of them.
Right.
And, my analogy for that I saw, it's not mine, but I liked it, was, I don't play golf, and somebody took me golfing once or twice, and I went along just to be friendly. And, so therefore my golf game is non-existent. And if I go on different days to the same course and I get different scores, it's not because all of a sudden I learned how to play golf. It's because one day was windy and blustery and the other was nice and calm and beautiful.
Okay.
And so if the environment changes with my same low level of skill, my scores are going to be different, but not because I'm different. It's the environment that's different.
All right.
And so that's how you might wind up getting different results from the same vaccine or different vaccines in different populations, at different times. And so that made sense to me. That made more sense to me than the grab the parachute, doesn't matter what color it is.
Yeah, I think so. Well, all right.
So this Atlantic article says, look, I can see why this might seem like quibbling.
Yes.
But none of these semantics discussions are quibbling. Stories matter. People don't remember details.
Words.
I can see why this might seem like quibbling, but I just don't think it's a trivial matter, says the author. It would be different if I thought the effectiveness of every one of the 6 vaccines coming against hospitalization and death would really end up being close to 100%, or if I bought in the idea now widespread that they have already been shown to nearly or effectively eliminate bad outcomes. There's very good reason to be encouraged, but to say right now that people who have been vaccinated face zero risk of serious outcomes, that for them COVID-19 is no more dangerous than the common cold, is sure to influence behavior. Imagine how people in high-risk groups would feel about going to the movies, or how their employers would feel about putting resources into workplace safety if we all assume that vaccines confer perfect protection against hospitalization or death.
Yes.
And imagine how the same people and employers would feel knowing they were 85% protected. Nor is there any reason to believe that the public or personal interest would be served by hype. People who think the vaccine provide ironclad protection may lose trust in experts if reality falls short. Trust in coronavirus vaccine information is already a problem. Activists who are opposed to vaccination may end up turning experts' super pump promises against them. And the idea that people can't handle nuance, says Ashish Jha, who is the public health dean at Brown School of Public Health, it's paternalistic. It's untrue. And I, the author, couldn't agree more. The principle of treating people like adults is fundamental. We don't need to exaggerate. Talking about trade-offs between different medicines and vaccines is complicated, but we do it all the time, and we can do it with COVID-19 vaccines too. So I think that's the author's Hilda Bastian. I think it's an excellent piece, an excellent point. And so these vaccines are great. They're going to do marvels. They're not perfect. Nobody should claim they are. And there are differences between them. Having said that, get what you get. Now, if you decide to sort by vaccine, that's wonderful. You could do that. In our area, you can't. You can sort by distance from where you are. And sometimes the clinic that you get come up on your vaccine website. We're using the CDC VAMS site, Vaccine Administration Management site. Some of the clinics will say, I'm getting Moderna. This is a Moderna clinic. And others will not. They won't even tell you what it is. And if you go to the Moderna clinic on any given day, you might get Pfizer because that's what they got.
Oh,
So they can't guarantee that you're going to wind up getting the vaccine you signed up for.
Oh,
it's just a question of supply. And so if you walk into one, let's say a Moderna vaccine place, and they're handing Pfizer out, are you going to say, no, I wanted Moderna, and turn around and leave? Most people don't.
They get Moderna.
Okay, well, whatever. But that simply means, okay, well, that means the next one has to be Pfizer because, people are still advising that you match the vaccine with the next one.
Right.
That's not true for J&J because it's one and done. But if it's Pfizer versus Moderna, we actually have special clinics set up now in my area for people who thought they were getting Moderna but got Pfizer so that they could get Pfizer the next one.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay. Well, that's an interesting approach to it, too. We're using the same website. But yeah, ours is sortable by distance and by vaccine type. But then it turns out it doesn't matter a great deal because we just have one giant clinic that's giving them all out. And
we just opened up one of those in the mall.
And it doesn't matter. But
by the way, just a piece of advice. If you do sign up, folks,
yes,
then check that very same site 24 hours before your appointment.
All right.
24 hours before your appointment, a new link will show up filling out the pre-vaccination form. It'll save you time when you get there.
Oh, okay.
They ask you, 8 or 9 questions. Did you ever get a vaccine before? Is this your first one? Did you ever have an allergic reaction? Are you pregnant? Are you breastfeeding? Did you ever have an allergic reaction to any of this stuff that's in there? Very simple. But that pre-form will not exist online until 24 hours before your appointment. So check it again the day before.
All right. Okay. So it is like getting on a plane. Check in 24 hours ahead of time. Bought your ticket on Expedia, 24 hours ahead of time, you got to check in.
Yeah. Okay. And you won't be able to do it 2 weeks if you want to be super efficient. It's not there yet.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll see how this thing goes. I guess if I end up at the one giant clinic and I've signed up for, now that's interesting, if I've signed up for Johnson & Johnson and now they offer me Pfizer or Moderna, do I say, well, I want the one-shot one, not this one?
Well, that's your decision. That's something you'll have to decide.
They'll say go home, and then I'll say, wait a minute, let me think about this for a second. But the clinic is close by,
that's why
so I
I'm
might
saying
go
people
home.
should think about this in advance. Exactly right.
Yeah, okay.
As it becomes more plentiful, that's less and less of an issue. But it's an issue now because supply is still short.
Yeah, so I have to wait for more trucks to show up, I think. And, and then you get your vaccination and be careful. I did see Josh Kroshower yesterday asking what I thought was, that seemed kind of dumb. He was complaining about, I guess he had seen a doctor on TV, Michael Osterholm, I found the tweet, saying, you wouldn't catch me tonight in a crowded restaurant somewhere, even with my vaccination, which sounds smart. And Josh
exactly
asking,
what we were talking about.
What's the point of vaccination then? Which sounds like maybe dumb. But maybe not everybody who asks the question is actually
so I can hug my grandkids.
Yeah,
that's what it's for.
There's
it's
other
not so I
things
can go to restaurants yet. When everybody gets vaccinated, yes, I can, but not right now.
Yeah. And so the point of a vaccination then is, in a year from now, we can all go to restaurants, I guess. But for now, I don't know. But it seems like, well, if I can't do everything I want or missed doing for the past year immediately, then I'm not going to get vaccinated? That doesn't sound like a good decision.
Look, I know last year a lot of people had Easter and Passover family Zoom sessions. Right. And this year, people are having, if you've been vaccinated, you could come, and the rest will be on Zoom sessions.
Ah, right. Okay.
And next year, it'll be everybody can come. That's the point.
Okay. Right. Which reminds me, I guess this year, why can't I Zoom Seder in Jerusalem? I've been saying this for years, that's where the next one would be, and I guess Zoom enables it, and why isn't anybody providing that as a service so we can all Zoom into a Jerusalem Seder?
You only need one person there for you to do that.
Yeah, so, there's several Israelis, as I understand it, living in the country, and we could get a hold of one of them. Probably they all have cell phones. Should be able to call them and ask them to host such a thing. Plus, they're being vaccinated.
But they'll make you stay for the whole thing. I'm just saying.
Yeah, or maybe buy luggage or electronics afterwards too. So okay. Well, at any rate, that's all good news. We'll all go and get vaccinated.
That kind of personal change that you get to see your family is why we're doing the vaccine. So the idea that you still can't go to restaurants is not really the major point. Unless you're single and you simply want to go to bars to pick people up, you're going to have to wait a little. I'm sorry.
I don't know what Josh's status is. It seems a little personal. I won't ask him. But I hope he's gotten some good answers by now.
But, again, this goes back to what I read about the author talking about the perfection or lack of same from the vaccines. Somebody will find the one thing that seems to be slightly off from their interpretation of what you said and make something of it, and that's Josh Kraushaar anyway. And he's certainly doing that with this vaccine.
Right. So not unexpected. I thought he was maybe smarter about the vaccine, and I was a little worried that, that wasn't the case. And, oh, well, too bad. Don't take your advice.
So,
ask your doctor if
Josh all I have to say about that. In the 1 or 2 minutes I have left, I want to ask you about something.
Yes.
And this is another one of those I didn't tell David in advance. So,
all these quizzes.
There was an interesting piece, though, I saw from Norm Ornstein in the Washington Post called Democrats Can't Kill the Filibuster, but They Can Gut It.
Yep. Okay.
I don't know if you saw that one. 3 reforms Manchin and Sinema might consider.
Right.
Okay, and they're talking about Manchin and Sinema being stubborn, Democrats seeing the urgency. But Democrats should proceed with caution, he says. In 2001, I warned that if Republicans harangued Senator Jim Jeffords about his apostasy, they'd regret it.
Yes.
He would switch parties, and he did.
Right.
Okay?
That's true.
So instead of naming and shaming, make the minority do the work. Currently, it takes 60 senators to reach cloture. Before that changed, if the Senate went around the clock, filibustering senators would have to be present in force. So if, for example, only 75 senators showed up for a cloture vote, 50 of them could invoke cloture and move to a final vote.
Yeah.
After the reform, only a few senators in the minority needed to be present to request for unanimous consent. So around-the-clock approach riveted the public, putting a genuine spotlight on the issues, and without it, the minority's delaying tactic goes unnoticed. Yes. So one way to restore it would be requiring at least 2/5 of the full Senate or 40 senators to keep debating instead of 60 to end debate. The burden will fall on the minority, and debate would end, making way for a vote on final passage.
Right. Yes.
Okay. Go back to the present and voting standard. Narrow the supermajority requirement. Those are all within reach, even if you can't get rid of the filibuster entirely.
You might be able to. Yeah. You might be able to convince Manchin and Sinema of those, the wisdom of those. And over the weekend, that was the big news that he was saying he was open to, some sort of tweak, then not eliminating the filibuster, but making it easier to achieve cloture, and that got people talking. And
and they're still talking, and that's why I'm bringing it up. This is an article from maybe a week ago, but I think it's now newly relevant because Manchin is at least saying, I'll listen to your ideas. I want to protect the rights of the minority, but I still want to get stuff done, and so talk to me.
Okay.
Well, these are some of the ideas.
Yes, then they're good ones, and if you like to take the nostalgic approach, you could just read my article saying the same thing from 10 years ago at Daily Kos. But
you better find it, because
yeah.
I think it's going to be newly relevant, and I do want to read it.
Well, it's out there, and the interesting thing, this does throw a new twist in things. The difficulty in implementing some of these things. These are good suggestions, and I think they'd be acceptable, and they might even, at one point they were acceptable. That was the point in my article from, I guess, not quite 10 years ago, was that allegedly, if you floated some of these things, there are Republicans who say, you know what, that's not a bad idea. I would accept that. But then, of course, if you put it to a vote, then they'll say, you know what, I thought about it again, and it is a terrible idea. I forgot that you would be proposing that, and you're a Democrat, and I can't have that. So, but there were times when Republicans got on board with these ideas and said, sure, I am for preserving the filibuster. If the filibuster is work, that's the way it should be. And I approve of that, and I'll allow it. I'll go along with it. But it was never tested in a vote where they might at the end say, I just found out that I meant only when I was wearing red socks was that true. And today I have blue ones on. So. No. And
then 2 final things, quickies,
all right.
Lightning round here. The CDC director, according to Caitlin Collins, will announce guidelines for what vaccinated people can do during the White House coronavirus briefing at 11 a.m. today.
Good.
So
Thank
for those of you who are wondering where this discussion that David and I are having is going to go, this is where it's going to go. So we'll hear a little bit more about that.
They were listening.
And the other lightning round thing is that apparently both Sinclair and Newsmax are having issues with coverage. That is to say, people aren't watching them, and they're starting to let people go.
Okay, great. That's good news as far as I guess. Well, their chief promoter was Trump, and his chief vehicle for doing it was Twitter, and that's not happening.
Right. Sinclair to lay off hundreds of employees, golf. Citing profound impact the pandemic has had, as if Trump's loss has nothing to do with it.
That's all right. Sure, it was the pandemic. All right.
That was pretty funny.
They were telling me that was a hoax just yesterday.
Yeah. Well, what about Newsmax?
Yeah.
Oh, why is CNN doing so well
that's
during
true.
the pandemic?
And they had to, right? Didn't they? Well, that was the one that. Wait, was it them? Was it Newsmax? Which was the channel that ended up having to say? Oh no, that was about the voting machines. They had to retract everything. So
Newsmax.
Okay. They're still on board with the hoax that's having them lay people off, or no?
What's
I'm not sure. Are they still going to stick to the idea that it's a hoax? They're laying everybody off because of it, but it is a hoax.
Laying off people is a hoax too.
Yeah. All right. Well, good. That's fine. Right. Why not? There's lots of room for that in conspiracy theory land. I saw some doozies over the weekend, so I guess anything's possible. Okay.
Right.
Thanks
for those of you who think that, finished the lightning round here, that we never talk about Democrats in trouble, Andrew Cuomo is in trouble.
Right.
He's defiant as top New York lawmakers calling him to quit. More people have come forward. And that's not surprising. There's probably dozens of others because he's a jerk. He's always been a jerk. He was our jerk, still our jerk, and he still may wind up staying. He's refusing to resign. He's pulling a Northam.
Okay.
But the difference is Northam, whatever he did was years ago. And what Cuomo did was hours ago. So we'll see how that goes.
All right. Well, that helps.
That's the story. That's many stories. And I will be back on Wednesday, and we'll do it again.
Okay. Right. That's just hours from now.
But you're primed for the 11 o'clock CDC announcement about what you can do with the vaccine. We had that discussion.
Yeah. I'm glad they worked that schedule out with me. Better than the last guy. All right. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We continue on. Let's see. I had a whole plan for what to do next, and I forgot what it was. So, all right. I'm still searching through yesterday's Twitter stream. Still looking for that one that I was referencing before about what the hell was it again? Yeah, I can't even remember now. Oh, yes, right. All the Democratic presidents having to start with the stimulus bill, which isn't in this case a stimulus bill, but sort of is, but we're referring to it by different names. Anyway, let's see. Other things over the weekend that made headlines, some more enduring than others. I guess the governor of Mississippi, what's his name? Something or other. It's Tate Reeves. I was like, that's a made-up name, isn't it? Tate Reeves. And who could tell? I was like, well, is it Tate Reeves or Reeves Tate? Which stupid, nonsensical, not regular name is it? It's Tate Reeves. So, anyway, yes, he was defending his. Well, they said defending. The headline says Mississippi governor defends ending mask mandate, but he really didn't. Maybe we could do media criticism as a theme today, because that reminds me I have another thing from last week that I didn't share. Didn't get a chance to bring up that maybe we'll skip to that. I don't know if it makes any sense as a follow-up. But anyway, Mississippi governor defends ending mask mandate. John Bowden for The Hill, none of our favorite publications or anything, but so here's what gets offered up, right? Mississippi Republican Governor Tate Reeves on Sunday defended his decision to roll back restrictions on businesses and end Mississippi's mask mandate, which is like Texas, saying the levels of COVID-19 in his state did not warrant such measures remaining in place. So, all right, he said that, right? That's not a defense of ending the mask mandate. It's a statement about things, some of which aren't true, that he said in lieu of giving a reason or defending his ending of the mask mandate. He's ending the mask mandate because he's a Trumper, and Trump people are anti-mask, and it will make them happy if he ends the mask mandate, even though it may also make them sick or dead. I mean, there's no explaining the dumbness, but saying, first saying, levels of COVID-19 in Mississippi don't warrant such measures remaining in place is just not true. So that can't really be a defense. I mean, I guess you could say it's a poor defense or a thoughtless defense or a gut reaction that is, I would say, though, it's a gut reaction being offered in place of a defense. But because it's being offered in response to a question, the journalists who pose these questions, and I guess here he's speaking with Jake Tapper, certainly one of the journalists susceptible to this sort of thing, but he occasionally breaks free of it. I mean, or he'll say that's a bad defense, but he really should. My wish list is that he would say that's not an answer because it isn't one. But he's speaking with Jake Tapper on State of the Union. The governor pushed back against criticism of states that have relaxed COVID-19 restrictions from top health experts, including Anthony Fauci. And he goes on to say, the numbers don't justify government intervention at the levels we are seeing in other states, Reeves said. Now, here I just want to point out, as I've been tracking things, I don't know what he's pointing at. I don't know what his argument is. And there may be a metric somewhere that he can point to and say, see, we're not doing that badly in this metric. But to me, one of the majors in terms of metrics is how many people are dying. And having done the calculations, 1 in every 438 Mississippians have died due to COVID. That's more than 1 in every 500, which is a terrible rate. But 1 in every 438 as it happens. And I think yesterday, I'll look it up now, that yesterday, it's a moving target because the numbers change all the time. But we might as well give the new one. Whereas Worldometers give us the click through to see the individual states. And, what are we looking for? If we're looking for deaths, we'll sort it that way because they'll be up at the top. See, Mississippi, the problem with Mississippi is they are 5th in the nation in terms of deaths per 1 million population, 1 million of population. And the number has stayed steady to what it clicked over to yesterday. It's now 2,288 deaths per million. There are only 10 states in the union, as poorly as we've performed with coronavirus, only 10 states have seen numbers over 2,000 per million, which is 2,000 per million is equivalent to 1 in every 500. So, and you're familiar with what's at the top of the list because of the early onset of COVID, the early arrival of the coronavirus in the Northeast, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts area, from southern New England through the mid-Atlantic, let's say. That's where it hit first and where they were blindsided by it, and it hit fast and heavy, and hospitals were overwhelmed, and doctors were not sure how to treat this stuff. They're still not sure, of course, but they have a much better idea of what's a successful treatment once you are hospitalized with this. And we've done something in terms of trying to flatten the curve in terms of number of people requiring hospitalization all at once. We've been relatively successful with that versus the early days. But the early days put New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut up at the top of the list, and they stayed there. They had a huge head start over everybody else. Mississippi crept up, but did it rapidly. I will say that. So maybe not creeping up isn't exactly the right word for it, but they have caught up. They've found themselves now 5th in the country, having surpassed Connecticut, which got, the early bomb dropped on them. Surpassed, by the way, South Dakota, which still sits at the top of the list in terms of cases per million, and largely because of the Sturgis biker rally. It surpassed Louisiana, which got an early hit from the failure to recognize the danger ahead of time or early enough and cancel Mardi Gras celebrations last year. So, at any rate, the list currently reads in terms of ranking, right? New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, all early hit states. Then Mississippi, Arizona, Connecticut, South Dakota, Louisiana, Alabama. That's your top 10. and all of the states that are looking at rates greater than 1 in every 500. As I mentioned also at the beginning here, so Mississippi currently sitting at 2,288 deaths per million. New Jersey at the top of the list, 2,654 per million. So it's considerably worse. But of course, again, there's that head start. And B, here's another question, more relevant, I think. Mississippi at 2,288. When was New Jersey, which I'm sure Tate Reeves and other Republican Mississippians would say, well, New Jersey is the real disaster. You guys should have masks on up there. Look at that. You're way ahead of us. When was New Jersey last at the rate Mississippi currently is experiencing? In other words, with 2,288 per million in deaths, when was that the case for New Jersey? And if you were thinking, if you looked it up and said, well, that was September, October, it was a long time. It's taken an awful long time for Mississippi to get up to where New Jersey was. But that might give you some comfort, but don't worry about it because it's not true. The answer is January 14th of this year, New Jersey's death rate per million of population was in the neighborhood of 2,280. And Mississippi now finds themselves there. In other words, Mississippi is still darting up the list. And for a while, it looked like New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island were slowing down. Then there was a spike, and the rate of growth in their deaths per million numbers began to rise. But for many months, the end of the summer into the fall, you would see a delta, of about in the low single digits in terms of how much did the deaths per million number change from day to day. Whereas you began to see in Mississippi not only double digits, but sometimes in the 20s. You would see a change of about +2 or +3 in the death per million in New Jersey and +14, +22 in Mississippi. And it continues to be the case. So it's kind of troubling. And you might very well see Mississippi catch up and surpass some of the 4 states that remain ahead of them on this, even though serious caseloads of COVID didn't arrive in Mississippi for, I would say, probably several months after they had already washed over New York, New Jersey, and southern New England. So they're not doing well. They do have numbers that warrant mask mandates. He just doesn't want to have a mask mandate. There's no science behind it or anything. There's no metrics behind it or anything. And so therefore, I reject outright the notion that Mississippi's governor has defended ending the mask mandate. He has said words in response to questions about ending the mask mandate, but those words don't make any sense and they're not true. So, okay, a little bit of media criticism there. The other thing I had in mind by way of media criticism, what the hell was it again? I don't know if I can even remember it. Oh, yeah. Now, how far back do I have to find this? This is it. I found it. It's not even that far back. An NBC News article. The date on this one, March 2nd. So it's been a while. This was about the passage of the COVID relief bill in the House. Or rather, I should say, immediately following, I think, the passage. Is that right? March 2nd, do I have the date right? Well, okay. It's about a broader scope, a broader range of things. But a headline you'll recognize as something you've seen 100 times before. And so therefore, I guess lots of room for it still in the mainstream media. And it's a headline that they'll print again and again and again, even when it's not true. This is, I found, an interesting example. So here's the headline. Not interested. in little scare quotes. Not interested, colon. Who's saying not interested? The answer is after the colon. Moderate Democrats. Who could have imagined that they would be upset about something? Not interested. Moderate Democrats chafe as House moves fast on progressive priorities. Can't have that, because even moderate Democrats, I guess, what defines them is, boy, do I hate progressive priorities. And I don't even think that's true. What are they talking about? The subheader gives us a better clue, I think, on LGBTQ rights, police reform, and immigration overhaul. Moderates are warning liberals, watch out liberals, they're warning liberals are risking, what? What is this? Have I misread this? Moderates are warning liberals are risking, I see. Moderates are warning that liberals are risking getting laws enacted. I was reading that and I was like, well, of course they're risking getting laws enacted. They want laws enacted, and so they're trying, watch out. Moderates say liberals are trying to pass laws. Yeah. No, I see. What they mean is the moderates say that the liberal or progressive position on some of these, what these laws ought to contain, is too radical, and it risks the passage of these bills. And I don't think that that's actually true. Nancy Pelosi, for all the problems some people seem to have with her, is pretty good at getting the things that they want past the House anyway, and pretty adept at figuring out what the Senate will and won't accept as well. But here's the interesting thing, right? So here's the headline. Oh, we're not interested. Moderate Democrats chafe as House moves fast on progressive priorities. So there will be plenty of detail, I'm sure, about what they don't like about progressive priorities. What's interesting is if you read the article, and that's what we'll do, I'll read it, and then afterwards ask yourself, what do moderates want? What are moderate policy priorities? What would they rather see done? And I'm afraid that there's no answer in this article, and that the question may never even have been asked, which is a bad approach to journalism in general. I mean, can I write an article that says moderates don't like progressives' approaches to legislating? I know. If they did, then they would be progressives. But what are the differences, and what can we work with these guys on and compromise and find agreement? And the answer is, I don't know, because they might not have any policy priorities. Or at least, according to this article, they don't. Alex Moe and Leanne Caldwell are the reporters here, and I don't know whether they cared or whether they noticed that there was a gap, just said, have a deadline, or what. Moderate Democrats say they are growing increasingly frustrated with their leadership's strategy of passing high-priority agenda items without trying to get Republican support, warning that nothing liberals hope to accomplish will become law. Although, it's starting to look like it will. But okay. We're not interested in just passing a bunch of partisan bills that sit in the Senate without action, Representative Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey said. There's a feeling among many of us that we're here to govern. The issues are far too important, and it will take bipartisan work to make it happen. Although the whole weekend's news and all last week's news was, no, it won't. But at least that's only in the context of reconciliation. But of course, an awful lot of what progressives wanted out of that bill is in there, and it's looking for all the world like it will become law because the Senate passed it too. Now, of course, by the way, just in terms of procedural catch-up here, not the condiment, but what we need to know about what stage we're in. Remember, yes, all the thoughts that you had in the back of your mind of all this are also probably true. The Senate passed a different version than the House. The vote-a-rama was certain to come up with at least some amendments that would change the body of the bill, and it did. And so now the House-passed version differs from the Senate-passed version, and the Senate-passed version has to go back to the House, and the House will vote on it. Everything I've seen indicates that the House knows what it's up against and is simply prepared to accept the Senate version relatively quickly, although there's been some talk about pushback sometimes from progressives in the House. I don't think that there's any plan for pushback on the minimum wage thing. I think they know they've kind of hit the wall on that. But there are a few other places where there might be some objection. But most of the talk over the weekend was more along the lines of warnings to the Manchin types. And I don't mean Mansion, but the Joe Manchin types. Remember, you're enjoying your moment in the sun and getting your way on everything here. But this bill, if we change it the way you're asking us to, is going to have to go back. If we change it at all, it has to go back to the House and get voted on. And if we change it the way you're asking us to, well, the margins are pretty thin in the House. And you can't really afford to lose any support for this bill among Democrats in the House. And if anybody's capable of producing that sort of change that would anger enough progressive votes that they would hold out, it might just be you, Joe Manchin. So, as I understand it, that was somewhat effective in putting the brakes on some of the things he was asking for, which is great because somebody needed to put the brakes on with Manchin. After that article, that profile we read of him about, I'm not after power, and power has turned has ruined some people. I've seen it happen, even some good people. I was hoping somebody was going to say to him at some point, you understand, I mean, you do have leverage here, but having leverage doesn't mean you get your way on every single thing, like that we just tailor every provision of this bill to what does Joe Manchin feel like. Like sometimes you're going to have to leave well enough alone or lose on a fight here and there. If your top priority is this, and this, fine. We can work with that, but you're not allowed to say everything has to go my way or I'll hold out. So, it doesn't appear that he actually had that in mind, but it was good to push back. But anyway, back to Josh Gottheimer here, who says, we're not interested in passing a bunch of partisan bills that sit in the Senate without action. So far that hasn't happened, so what's the problem, is my question. Now that the House has passed the $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief bill, the Democratic-led chamber is focused on the party's agenda, including LGBTQ rights, police reform, equal pay, the Violence Against Women Act, the DREAM Act, an agricultural worker immigration bill, voting rights, and 2 gun bills. Some are priorities that Democrats and President Joe Biden promised on the campaign trail, and most are proposals that Republicans have showed some interest in, including some who have voted for previous versions of LGBTQ rights, police reform, and immigration, but who now say Democrats are making no effort to find common ground. Whatever. That means the bills the House is about to approve have little or no chance of getting a filibuster-breaking 60 votes in the Senate, which would require the support of at least 10 Republicans. And then Gottheimer comes back. You disincentivize action when you legislate that way. This, again, Gottheimer, a co-chair of the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus, said. And, at this point they ask, okay, so, I don't think you're right about that, but you're a problem solver. You're in a caucus that says you're a problem solver. What are the problems you want to solve? What's top of the list for you? You're upset about progressive priorities. What would Josh Gottheimer rather see us working on? And I'll read you the rest of the article. There's no answer. Even though the next paragraph begins, the alternative, what is the alternative? The alternative would be for Democrats in the House to work on bills through the committee process and allow Republican amendments and negotiations, you see, giving responsibility to committee chairs to write legislation that can get bipartisan support instead of bills that simply include what liberals want. But, a lot of these things did go through the committee process. They went through the committee process last Congress and didn't get anywhere, and so now they would like to try passing them again now that Democrats ostensibly control the Senate as well, and there's a Democratic president who might sign legislation that makes it out. The fact is, though, that, a lot of these things didn't go through committee a second time because they don't need to, and they're top priorities, and the Democrats still feel the same way they felt about them last time, and they want to put these things out in rapid fire and let them be on the record early. Anyway, the Democratic House leadership has been plotting the quick passage of its agenda and instituted a rule that allows any bill passed in the last Congress to bypass the committee process and go straight to the floor for a vote before April 1st. Now, this is very revealing, and I think this article begins to discuss a little bit of why moderates now think that's a problem. But if not, we can explain that if it's not immediately obvious to you. This is kind of an interesting new-ish approach to things, although it's been done before, certainly. If you just approved this bill in committee with largely the same membership a couple months ago in the end of the last Congress, then bringing it back for this Congress, really, do we need to go through the hearings again? That's actually like a very Republican approach to things. Well, we want to slow this process down, so let's demand hearings. Well, we just had hearings. Even if you did it at the beginning of the last Congress, you basically just had those hearings. All right. In a Monday night meeting, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi defended her strategy, telling her leadership team that in the next few weeks they will pass a series of bills that would enact Democratic priorities and won't seek Republican input. According to one source familiar with the discussion, no one in the meeting challenged her, the source said. So, now they, of course, all call the media and challenge her there. Instead, President Joe Biden has sent two proposals to Congress, an immigration bill and the COVID-19 relief proposal, both of which were written to include liberal wish lists and not win over any Republican votes, in some cases for good reason and in some cases for a neutral reason, like, we're going to use reconciliation, so we don't really need it. But, would it be nice to have it? Sure, but come on over and do the right thing. Doesn't mean we have to hamstring ourselves just so that you'll help us. The House Democratic leadership must balance the desires of a diverse caucus, which includes progressives who are advocating for bold legislation and moderates from swing states, who I guess are asking for baby steps on everything. Some on the left, oh boy, want to take advantage of the moment and are calling on their colleagues in the Senate to simply kill the filibuster and enact the most progressive proposals without any Republican support. We should be as bold and ambitious as our caucus will bear in the House, Representative Veronica Escobar of Texas said. We should not negotiate against ourselves. One House leader pointed to polls instead of the voting rolls to defend the approach. We believe these bills enjoy overwhelming support among Democrats, Republicans, and independents among the American people. Frankly, we don't know why that support, particularly in terms of Republican support, doesn't translate to the members of the House or Senate. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer told reporters on Tuesday. Now, just another data point for those of you who say, but he's a stuffy old moderate and even moderate to conservative Democrat and not a bold progressive leader. I wouldn't necessarily categorize him among the progressive leadership, but I did tell you Steny Hoyer, a pretty rock-ribbed Democrat. And I think this quote helps illustrate that, right? We believe that these bills enjoy overwhelming support among Democrats, Republicans, and independents among the people, but we don't know why they don't enjoy that support among Democrats, Republicans, and independents in the House and Senate, except we do know that he's just being kind and saying, well, they're all paralyzed by Trumpism and or are just such tribal partisans that they won't allow Democrats to get credit for passing a bill that they support. But that's some statement from Hoyer. When the House votes on the George Floyd police reform bill this week, which was actually last week, it is expected to win no Republican support, though 3 Republicans backed a nearly identical bill last year. And here's where things have changed. Some moderate Democrats tried to negotiate a bill with Republican colleagues, but those talks fell apart after Democratic leaders decided not to make any changes to qualified immunity, a component of the bill that would increase police officers' personal liability. Representative Fred Upton of Michigan, one of 2 Republicans still in Congress who backed the police reform last year, doesn't plan to vote for it this year. His spokesman pointed to a previous statement that noted Upton wanted changes to the qualified immunity provision. Rank-and-file Democrats say they will continue to try to negotiate. Now, it does get into, eventually, this article, I don't know whether we'll get it before the break, why minds might be changing, not only among Republicans, but among Democrats as well. Like most, I believe reforms are necessary, and I believe a good faith effort could still yield a measure that could become law, and that's what I'm encouraging. Representative Dean Phillips, Democrat of Minnesota, said about the George Floyd bill. Well, I guess the explanation of it comes later if it comes at all, so that'll be your cliffhanger. After the break, we'll discuss why people might change their minds about these things as between last Congress and this one. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning. I have good news to report. Many more listeners like you are making critical contributions that keep our show on the air. Makes good sense, of course, and patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple. Now you can make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for helping keep you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all of your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. A bit of breaking news that I was able to take notice of during the break. I guess what better time to take notice of breaking news than during a break? Senator from Missouri, Roy Blunt, longtime member of Congress, announcing he will not be seeking re-election, not running for re-election. And it's noted here, so it's one of 4 now Senate Republicans up for re-election in 2022 and declining to seek re-election. Blunt is one. Ron Johnson, another. Also, Grassley, and who else? I guess more than that. I'm reading from 2 different tweets here. But the first one just talking about Blunt and saying that they lose another senator to this. And then another tweet saying 4 GOP incumbents aren't running in 2022. And Senator Ron Johnson said, leaving office is probably my preference. I guess he's not solid on it. Also, then Grassley, and in response to another tweet, this is retweeting Jonathan Martin here, saying, Jonathan Martin listing Portman, Toomey, and Burr, and now Blunt. So I guess that's quite a lot of people in play here. Portman, Toomey, Burr, Blunt, maybe Grassley. Grassley hasn't said if he's running next year, but he's 87 years old. So that would be 5, and Ron Johnson is on the bubble, I guess. So up to 6 Republicans declining to seek re-election, and that's always a good opportunity to pick up some seats. And 2022 was not looking particularly good, generally speaking, I don't think, for Democrats in the Senate. So that's a bit of good news. We'll take that and see how that develops. Let's see. Back to the NBC News article, in which there's no evidence of what moderate Democrats actually want to do affirmatively, despite the fact that they were able to once again get mainstream media headlines out of their dissatisfaction with the progressive agenda. So where were we with this? Let's see. Like most, I believe reforms are necessary. We're talking about now the policing bill. And I believe a good faith effort could still yield a measure that could become law. And that's what I'm encouraging. That was Representative Dean Phillips of Minnesota talking about the George Floyd bill. Pelosi recently pushed back publicly on the criticism, specifically over the policing bill, calling it fair. And I think she means the bill here. The criticism probably also sometimes somewhat fair, but calling it fair and adding, what the Senate will do is what the Senate will do, but we will send over the bill that has the balance that we have in it. In other words, not negotiating against themselves, whether as Democrats or House members, and saying, well, we're worried about what the Senate will do. Well, if the Senate will do it, let them do it. Don't do it for them. You send them the bill that you want them to have and see what they do. A similar situation played out last week, now 2 weeks ago, when the House voted on the Equality Act, a bill that expands LGBTQ rights. 2 Republicans who supported the bill in 2019 and remain in Congress voted against it this time, as Democratic leaders chose not to change the bill in order to garner bipartisan support. And that's interesting. I mean, just the setup of the problem is interesting. Why didn't you change the bill to garner bipartisan support? Well, I don't know. Could it be the fact that I offered the exact same language verbatim in 2019 and got bipartisan support, and so I thought that maybe the way to get bipartisan support this time was to offer them the exact same thing, because they would never be hypocritical about it and change their vote on substantive legislation just to distance themselves from Democrats now that they've lost the majority in the Senate and lost the White House, and there's a real risk of this thing becoming law. Would they? And the answer, of course, is of course they would change their vote on verbatim the same substantive legislation in order to avoid giving the appearance of bipartisanship to a bill that might actually become law. They were willing to lend the appearance of bipartisanship to a bill they thought had no chance of becoming law because it would never pass a Republican Senate or be signed by a Republican president. But now that there's some real danger of this thing actually being enacted into law, yes, it says exactly the same thing, but no, they won't participate in a bipartisan exercise. What does the media come away with on that? Why didn't you change? What's wrong with you not seeking good faith bipartisanship? Well, the bipartisanship we got last time turned out not to be good faith. I mean, we thought it was, but it turns out that it's not. Why didn't you change your legislation to chase down more bad faith from Republicans? I don't know. Why isn't your question, what happened to you as between 2019 and now, that you said you supported this last year, but really you only supported it because you didn't support it and thought you could play both sides of the fence, but this year the opportunity to play both sides of the fence is gone, so now you changed your mind? That's the story. Why don't you pursue that? I don't know. I guess that's too tricky for us. Anyway, that's another issue with this article. Anyway, so what do they do in this case, right? Now, confronted with that, okay, they haven't been confronted with it. They found out after the fact that I read this thing and say, what the hell's wrong with you? But at the time, they said, oh, you know what we'll do? Let's get a follow-up quote from a Republican. And here's what they got. House Democratic leadership had ample time to make these changes, but sadly, they ignored multiple good faith efforts by my colleagues and instead doubled down on some of the most troubling issues, including sabotaging religious freedom. According to Representative Mario Diaz-Balart, Republican of Florida, in his statement, Senator Susan Collins of Maine, who loves bipartisanship, previously a co-sponsor of the Equality Act, but now undecided on how she will vote because Republicans have been locked out of the negotiating process. Now, mind you, again, these bills went through committee last time, came to the floor, got bipartisan support, are being offered verbatim exactly the same language. Diaz-Balart says, why didn't they look for good faith efforts for bipartisanship? I voted for it last time. Well, it says the same thing. I know, but this time I'm not going to vote on it. I'm not going to vote for it for political reasons. Well, why isn't the problem with you? Well, wait a second. What about everything here? What about this? What about this? Not only did they not seek my input on this, they doubled down on some of the most troubling issues, including sabotaging religious freedom. That is an interesting comment, Congressman. I was given to understand that it was the exact same bill. How do you double down on something without changing the text of the bill? And the answer is, look, the good rich blimp. Zing! And away runs Diaz-Balart. So, what the F? Again, if you offer the same bill and the guy says, well, they doubled down on something. No, they didn't. Well, they're Loch Ness Monster. And, come on. And Susan Collins, I'm deeply troubled by the fact that they didn't include me in the negotiating process. Well, there was no negotiating process this time. They just brought you the same bill that was negotiated last time, and last time you said it was fine with you. I'm deeply troubled that I have to answer this question. Loch Ness Monster. Look over there. Okay, fine. The Equality Act was a starting point for negotiations, and Senator Collins agreed to introduce it with the agreement that all of the co-sponsors would work together and make further changes. Collins' spokeswoman, Annie Clark, said, unfortunately, they were unwilling to work out those changes. They weren't necessary in the last Congress. That's why we offered the same bill because we had your agreement last time. But lo and behold, there's now a reason why Susan Collins doesn't co-sponsor the bill she co-sponsored last time. Womp womp. Who could have guessed? All right, next section of the article. With a slim 4-seat Democratic majority in the House, moderates are threatening to use their power to force concessions. Let's see what these concessions are. A group of at least 8 moderates. 8 moderates. It's a very moderate number, 8. That's good. Had a minor win Monday night when they threatened to derail H.R. 1, the House Democrats' signature legislation, which aims to expand voting access and campaign transparency over their opposition to public financing of elections. All right. Exerting that power may become a survival technique. Moderate Democrats largely represent districts that are also moderate and therefore more likely to replace them with a Republican in the midterm election. National Republican Congressional Committee, the NRCC, has already released a list of 47 House Democrats it plans to target, including Gottheimer and Phillips, which, big deal. So they put out a list of 47 they plan to target. You know how these things go. 12 of them will have a close shot. Or maybe even, it's certainly possible that they can win a whole bunch of them. But a list of 47 doesn't mean all 47 are in danger of losing. It's just, this is what we want these people to feel threatened. Anyway, we need to put points on the board. We need to deliver for the American people, said Representative Stephanie Murphy, Democrat of Florida, a leader of the moderate Blue Dog Coalition, who's also an NRCC target. This is interesting, too. Let me get to this in a second, but I'll stop here for we need to put points on the board. We need to deliver for the American people. All right, here comes H.R. 1. We say no. I thought you wanted some points on the board. Yes, but not this point. All right, how about the Equality Act? No. All right, what point do you want to put on the board? I don't know. What kind of bill do you want to put the points up with? I don't know. We need to do this, though, because I'm an NRCC target. Okay. Next sentence. She is weighing a run for the Senate. Oh, well, that is la-di-da. That's fantastic. But you know what? What are the threats of it's a good way to get off the NRCC target list? Run for the Senate. The NRCC doesn't care whether you're running for the Senate. Then you become the NSCC's problem. But yeah, that's interesting. Well, you need to do what I want here in the House because I'm targeted by the Republicans. No, yes, but you're saying we need to do what you want in the House because you mean to run for Senate. And you think if you are ostracized in the House and lose a bunch of times or are a doomsayer and are wrong every time, that Democrats won't support you in what would probably be a crowded Democratic primary for the Senate in Florida. And that would be bad for you politically. True. Right. Okay. So I think you could probably acknowledge that. But guess who's not interested in taking the hits so that whoever the hell, Stephanie Murphy, I don't know anything about Stephanie Murphy, has the best shot in a crowded primary for the Senate race there. Well, the least interested, the other 434 members of the House, certainly the other 200 and something Democrats who have their own problems and are really not worried about, maybe we should tinker with this legislation that got Stephanie Murphy's support last time, because this time she plans to take a hypocritical approach to the primary for the Senate in Florida. So we should all, besmirch our own reputations so that Stephanie Murphy might have a better shot in the 19-way primary. Whatever. I don't think it's going to happen. Anyway, we need to demonstrate to the American people we can govern and make lives better, she said, adding, And that sometimes means by making incremental change. It does sometimes mean that. That is true. But again, I know I've chopped this article up into a million pieces, but at any point in any of these segments of this article that I reviewed, because that's the entirety of the article, did you get a better feel for what moderate Democrats think are the points we should put on the board? What should we be working on? What would make Stephanie Murphy a shoo-in for the Senate nomination? I got no idea. All we know is that we have to show people we can govern and make their lives better. Our version of, I'll show you I can govern. Take that bill I voted for last year and give it to me again so I can vote against it this time and so that it doesn't pass because there's only a 4-vote margin in the House. Great job. You've certainly shown people you can legislate and you're constant in your positions and can be counted on to do exactly what's expected of you in the Senate. All right, so whatever. I just found that kind of fascinating. There's a whole article under the headline of, Democrats in disarray. And the disarray is these guys who say there's disarray can't tell you why there's disarray and what they want to replace the disarray with. But they can tell you, we got to show people we can govern. Okay, how? In what respect? What sort of thing would you like to see happen? I would like to win for the Senate. That is interesting, but why? What are you going to govern with when you get there? I don't actually know. Some version of what I governed with last time, I guess, but with changes. But anyway, the real thing underlying all of this is they didn't really agree with it last time. They just thought they wanted to participate in what might have been a blue wave election and not get, pulled under by the undertow. I've got to go along with the wave here, but I didn't really approve of it last time. So the real compromising of the principles was perhaps last time, which good. I'm glad they compromised their principles and allowed us to pass good messaging bills. But yeah, they're bailing out now, and more to the point, they have no way of expressing what they want instead because they don't know. They just know, my best shot at winning the primary for the Senate race is to distance myself from progressives. And people will say, that's a much more moderate, middle-of-the-road position. That's the kind of thing we need in the Senate. Let's pick this person I know nothing about. I really, honestly, know nothing about her. Maybe she's great. Wouldn't that be pleasant to find out that was the case? Maybe you can tell me if you are from Florida. All right, let's see. Other things to catch up on. I don't know. No particular order of importance. Just this is where they are we're at that point in the show where we just do whatever is up at the top in pocket. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Boo. Oh, where's that grogger I had for Purim? All right. Well, I don't know how many of you get that joke anyway, but we should use that for Marjorie Taylor Greene every time we mention her name. She's in the news this time because her delaying tactics are frustrating her fellow Republicans. And that's kind of funny. Scott Wong reporting for The Hill. Georgia GOP Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene's efforts to delay congressional business by forcing futile procedural votes to adjourn the House each day are disrupting committee hearings and virtual constituent meetings and are ticking off a growing chorus of Republican colleagues. She didn't give this any thought, obviously. And good, I'm glad somebody else is speaking up. Representative Ann Wagner, Republican of Missouri, had to rush out of a committee hearing with Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell on monetary policy. Representative David Joyce of Ohio had to step out of a video conference with an international conservation group. And Tim Walberg of Michigan had to halt a Zoom meeting with local chambers of commerce from the Great Lakes region. Aggravated, Wagner replied when asked by The Hill how she felt about having to vote on one of Greene's motions to adjourn one recent morning. Before stepping onto the House floor, Wagner added, Ms. Greene doesn't have 3 hearings today like I do. She's got 0 hearings because she's not on any committees. Greene, stripped of her 2 committee assignments last month, has plenty of time on her hands, and the first-term firebrand and diehard Trump defender has been using it to gum up the works of the House of Representatives. Not really. It takes about 15 minutes to get rid of it. It's political payback, she says, I'm sure, to the Democrats who voted to boot her off both the Education and Budget committees over her past social media posts embracing dangerous conspiracy theories that the 9/11 attacks were a hoax and that the Sandy Hook and Parkland school shootings were staged false flag operations, and expressing support for violence against top Democrats, including the execution of Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Since she has distanced herself from the wild theories and now says she has since distanced herself and says she regrets some, quote, words of the past. They were a couple weeks in the past, you see. Anyway, yeah, so nonsense, and she's an idiot. And by the way, as I was reading over her record and the fact that most of this stuff was over social media posts, I know, to me, this is good. But having watched Republicans, and I guess some Democrats, sink a nomination. Who is it? Why I can't. I don't care about the nomination, so that's why I've never really. Neera Tanden, that's it, who was nominated, I think, for what? OMB director, and Republicans and not a few Democrats jumped on the bandwagon there to say, Manchin. To sink her nomination because bad social media posts, and that was supposed to be. We were supposed to believe that the Republicans, same Republicans who never saw any of Trump's tweets, have all read Neera Tanden's bad tweets, and maybe they are bad. I don't even care. I have not paid attention to that issue for whatever reason, but good. So I guess what's good for the goose is good for the gander, as they say, even though that's sexist language and we reject it. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, too, should have been. She was rightly booted from her committee assignments based on the same complaint. So there you go. Or maybe they thought maybe Republicans considered Neera Tanden payback for Marjorie Taylor Greene. Anyway, Greene's guerrilla tactics are also inflicting pain on her Republican colleagues who have complained that they serve no purpose and interrupt the flow of the workday for lawmakers, particularly meetings that are planned around anticipated vote schedules. Some point out the irony. Greene complained that ousting her from committees stripped my district of their voice and stripped my voters of having representation to work for them. Now Republicans are turning the tables on Greene, arguing that her obstruction is making them less effective at representing their own constituents. It's a senseless thing that doesn't really provide for productive results in the Congress. Joyce, a member of the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus, told the Hill. There they are again. I guess they only like to talk to those guys. This week, he had been on a Zoom video call sponsored by the International Conservation Caucus Foundation with Representatives Henry Cuellar of Texas, Betty McCollum of Minnesota, and Jeff Fortenberry of Nebraska, when Greene forced an unexpected vote to end the House business for the day. All it does is disrupt the organization of the day when you're trying to meet with constituents, when you have come to vote for something. You have to come for something that's not going to pass. By the way, they could vote no on her motions, and that would probably send her a good signal. But instead, they come and vote for tribal reasons, and they instead have party line votes on adjournment. Why not start voting no and telling her this is stupid and we're not going to support you in this anymore? Anyway, there's more, but it, I think, tends to go to the fact that she's a QAnon nut job, and we all know that that's the case. On Wednesday morning, Wahlberg was, in fact, here's your answer, one of the 18 Republicans who bucked Greene, bucked with a B, and voted against her motion to adjourn. That was the largest number so far, and Wahlberg made clear to the Hill that he had been the second Republican to cast a no vote on the floor that day. The 17 other Republican no votes ended up including House Republican Conference Chair Liz Cheney, Representatives Tom Rice of South Carolina and Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, 3 Republicans who voted to impeach Trump, Jim Banks of Indiana, the new chairman of the Conservative Republican Study Committee, House Appropriations Committee members Kay Granger of Texas, Mike Simpson of Idaho, Steve Womack of Arkansas, Mark Amodi, I don't know, is that how he pronounces it, of Nevada, John Rutherford of Florida, and Joyce. Representatives Don Bacon of Nebraska, Darrell Issa of California, Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin, David McKinley of West Virginia, and Gregory Murphy of North Carolina. Oh, there's more. Marionette Miller Meeks of Iowa, and Blake Moore of Utah. also among the 18, or maybe making up all of the 18. I don't understand the strategy, Banks said after the vote. So, very good. On February 25th, just 2 Republicans, Rice and Rutherford, voted against Green's motion to adjourn. So I guess they're catching on slowly but surely. And I guess as the numbers grow, you might begin to see Green back off. But, she's also an idiot, and she might never back off under any circumstances. We'll wait and see whether she bothers coming back into town on a Monday to see if there's an opportunity to stop people there. All right, let's see. Other quick roundup stuff. I'm going to have to organize my roundups a little bit better in the coming days to make sure that we get to some of these stories which have been waiting for a long time. But our reverse chronological roundup says new movement on the Georgia DA investigating Trump. The news here, Georgia DA investigating Trump taps racketeering expert for the probe. According to reports from Reuters, this one once again rounded up by The Hill, but maybe I should look at the primary source here. Linda So, reporting for Reuters, the DA investigating whether Trump illegally interfered with Georgia's 2020 election, has hired an outside lawyer who's a national authority on racketeering, which I hadn't even really thought about so much for this prosecution, but it's a good approach. Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis has enlisted the help of Atlanta lawyer John Floyd, who wrote a national guide on prosecuting state racketeering cases. Floyd was hired recently to provide help as needed on matters involving racketeering, including the Trump investigation and other cases, according to the source. Let's see. Well, anyway, I think that's really the gist of it. Doesn't really portend that much more, but at least they're taking the prosecution of this case seriously. Lots more developments. Maybe we'll spend some time reading these later on. But we mentioned the other day that the FBI has seized some phone records that indicate some direct contact between some particular members of Congress and some of the insurrectionists, in particular the Proud Boys, from January 6th. And so all of these things, all these suppositions coming to fruition, I think we know probably who they're targeting in all of this. And I guess they know too, because everyone noted last week how agitated Josh Hawley seemed in asking questions of Merrick Garland in his confirmation hearings about, let's say hypothetically you had seized some phone records of members of Congress regarding their participation in the insurrection. What could you tell me about that? So I guess he knows that he's under fire for all of this. All right. And speaking of which, the Congresswoman Lofgren has put something out here, a report that she styles a social media review listing public social media posts from members of the U.S. House of Representatives who were sworn into office on January 6, 2021, and who are on 3rd, and then voted to overturn the 2020 presidential election. So in all likelihood, we know who they're going to be nailing here, but she does it by state. So apparently there are many members of Congress with some social media posts that were disturbing and worthy of note. So we thank her for putting that publication out. Time now, though, for us to wrap things up for the day. We'll get back to all of the other fun stories that will compete for our attention tomorrow through Friday. Although I do have advance warning here. Joan tells me she's going to be out tomorrow, so hopefully all's well there, but some other business calling her away, so we'll miss her, and we'll see. Maybe that'll give us some extra opportunity to hit on some of these other stories that have been lingering for a while. In the meantime, time now for us to hand the microphone over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and this now gives me plenty of time to read through his preview for once. Now, if I spend the next 5 minutes talking about how nice it is to be able to have the time to read through his preview and then not read through the preview, Well, that would be par for the course, but frustrating. So instead, here's what we got. Let's see. Starting off in the Bistro Cafe. In news, politics, and pop culture, all roads lead back to the Murdochs. Interesting. Let's find out what that's about. Then, on the rest of the menu, the Trump administration purposely relocated the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, from D.C. to Kansas City, at least in part, to curtail research and stifle farmer confidence. Okay. Republican governors are stepping up wolf kills before the Biden administration cracks down on it. Lots of things. A long list of things that the Biden administration can reverse quickly and easily, and I hope they're working on that, among other things, on that list. And the Georgia prosecutor probing Trump's election interference. There we are, the news of the hiring of the racketeering attorney. After the break, they move to the chef's table with the international news, where the U.S. and South Korea have signed a new agreement on a cost-sharing deal for troops stationed there as a bulwark against North Korean intransigence. Back to the old practice of politics on the Korean Peninsula.
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
A little bit more here. How about this? News from Russia, where it's said that a longtime human rights organization in Russia has announced it is disbanding because of the country's draconian foreign agents law, probably by design at that. Anyway, that and much more on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam next, and we'll see you tomorrow.